Gogeta Blue versus Moro sounds like a straightforward comparison, until you actually break down what each character represents in Dragon Ball Super. On one is the absolute peak of fusion power, perfected coordination, God Key mastery, and overwhelming burst potential. And on the other is Moro, a villain whose strength isn't just raw power, but absorption, energy manipulation, and the ability to turn an opponent's power against them. So the real question isn't just who hits harder, it's whether fusion level dominance can end the fight before Moro's abilities reshape it completely. Today, we're breaking down Gogeta Blue versus Moro. From the very beginning of the film, it's clear that Broly is the central danger, not because of strategy or technique, but because of how unnaturally and fast he evolves in combat. He starts off clashing with base Vegeta and almost immediately begins matching him blow for blow. What makes this alarming isn't just Broly's raw strength, it's how quickly he adjusts. Within moments, he's forcing Vegeta to escalate to Super Saiyan just to maintain control of the fight. This adaptive growth isn't subtle, it's so extreme that even Frieza, a combat prodigy who's seen gods and monsters firsthand, comments directly on it. Vegeta himself also acknowledges it. Broly isn't just learning, he's accelerating mid-battle with no obvious ceiling in sight. Eventually, Vegeta pushes further and ascends to Super Saiyan God, which finally allows him to flip the script. At this point, Vegeta isn't just keeping up, he's outright dominating Broly and moving towards a decisive finish. But before that can happen, Broly taps into Ikari, a state that draws on the power of the Great Ape while remaining in humanoid form. That moment is pretty crucial. Ikari allows Broly to take a direct blow from Super Saiyan God Vegeta, something that shouldn't be possible under normal circumstances. Conceptually, Ikari functions as a Great Ape style amplifier, roughly a 10 times boost stacked on top of Broly's existing power. Once Ikari comes into play, the tables turn completely. Vegeta begins overwhelmed and Goku has to step in. This is where a lot of people get tripped up. We see base Goku briefly fighting Ikari Broly, despite Ikari Broly having just pressured Super Saiyan God Vegeta. On the surface, that looks insane and has led many fans to conclude that base Goku must be stronger than God Vegeta. That interpretation seems even more tempting when you factor in director Tatsuya's comment that Goku is already approaching the realms of the God of Destruction, while Vegeta is still chasing that level. Dragon Ball Super's power jumps are already absurd, but the more grounded interpretation is that Vegeta was deliberately holding back earlier, gauging Broly's strength rather than instantly going all out. If Goku were genuinely leads above Vegeta here, their later fight wouldn't look the way that it does. When both Saiyans fight seriously in Super Saiyan Blue, they're portrayed as equals. They trade blows, cover one for another, and maintain peace together. However, there was a time where Vegeta had to sit out where he could have gained more energy to fight alongside Goku, whereas Goku would have been fighting Broly for a much longer time. So I can see the argument going either way. As the battle continues, Goku takes over and begins testing Broly more deliberately. He even drops back into Super Saiyan God and unveils God Vine, freezing Broly in place, not to attack but to try to reason with him and de-escalate the situation. That attempt fails spectacularly when Broly simply brute forces his way out, leaving Goku and Vegeta no choice but to escalate to Super Saiyan Blue. At this stage, Goku and Ikari Broly are effectively even. Goku has a slight edge, but it comes more from battle experience and battle IQ rather than superior power. Broly has spent his life fighting in isolation, relying almost entirely on instinct, while Goku has decades of structured combat against skilled opponents. Skill-wise, Goku leads, but raw attack potency is neck and neck. And that's when Broly hits a wall. His growth stalls, which visibly irritates Frieza, wanting to push Broly beyond his limit. Frieza does the unthinkable and kills Paragus with the death beam and pretends that it was collateral damage. The result is immediate and catastrophic. Broly snaps and transforms into Super Saiyan. This isn't just a form change, it's an explosion. Super Saiyan grants a 50 times multiplier and Broly stacks it on top of his Ikari state. And the end result of this is a Broly who is now roughly equal to post-tournament of power Super Saiyan Blue Goku at full output, and rapidly surpassing both Saiyans as the fight drags on. From here on out, Goku and Vegeta are completely outclassed. A common argument from fans is that Goku should have used Blue Kaioken and Vegeta should have activated Blue Evolution to end the fight, but that logic ignores the numbers. Even at their peak, those forms offer roughly 20 times boost over standard Blue. Broly, meanwhile, just stacked a 50 times Super Saiyan multiplier onto a base that was already pressuring God tier fighters. Even with Kaioken or Blue Evolved, they're still climbing uphill. And that's the point that the movie is making. Broly isn't a problem you solve by transforming harder, he's a runaway force of nature, one that eventually requires fusion, not refinement to stop. By this point, Broly is still comfortably ahead of both Saiyans. Even if you stack Blue Kaioken and Blue Evolution on Vegeta, the math doesn't suddenly flip in their favor. Broly's already sitting on a massive advantage, and unlike him, his power isn't curved or stable, it's accelerating. Goku can't sustain Kaioken long enough to matter, and Vegeta's evolution drains him over time. Neither of them can afford a drawn-out fight against someone whose entire gimmick is mid-battle evolution. The longer they stay, the worse that it would get. And that's really one of the key problems. Broly doesn't plateau and every exchange just sharpens him. At this stage, trying to tag team him separately isn't strategic, it's suicide. So the only logical play left on the board is fusion. After retreating, failing twice, and finally nailing the fusion dance on the third attempt, Gogeta enters the picture. Now, to understand why this instantly changes everything, you have to remember how fusion is consistently portrayed in Dragon Ball, whether it's Potara or Metamoran. A base fusion are almost always depicted as superior to the individual fighters at their absolute peak. This isn't a one-off as well, it's a reoccurring rule of the the franchise. We've seen it before in Fusion Reborn with Goku powering up to Super Saiyan 3, which was enough to send shockwaves through heaven and hell, two realms described as universal in scale, which allowed him to overpower base Janemba outright. But once Janemba transformed, even Super Saiyan 3 Goku with Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta backing him up got completely overwhelmed. The gap was undeniable, and yet Gogeta, only going Super Saiyan, casually erased Super Janemba like he wasn't even a real threat. That context matters because Broly movie Gogeta doesn't just meet expectations, he overshoots them. Even in base, he performs better than Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta ever did. He effortlessly keeps up with, redirects, and outright embarrasses Broly's Ki Blast. These are the same attacks that had Blue Goku and Vegeta scrambling just to survive, and had Frieza visibly panicking on the sidelines. Once Gogeta turns Super Saiyan, the fight stops being competitive. Super Saiyan Broly gets dominated, and yes, Broly continues to grow and manages to land hits, but it doesn't mean that the gap closed. Gogeta isn't just raw power, he's Goku and Vegeta combined. Broly's only real edge at this point is brute force, and even that isn't enough. Then the fight escalates again. Their clash becomes so violent that it literally fractures reality, shattering dimensions around them. Broly pushes him even further, entering a fully unleashed Super Saiyan state with green hair, a very clear visual callback to Dragon Ball Z Broly. For a brief moment, this looks dangerous. Super Saiyan Gogeta has to actually try, but the second Gogeta ascends to Super Saiyan Blue, the fight is effectively over. Broly doesn't land another meaningful blow, and he's completely overwhelmed and outclassed. Gogeta Blue was moments away from erasing him with a single Kamehameha, not injuring him or knocking him out, but ending the fight outright. And the only reason Broly survives at all is because Chi-Lai intervenes with a wish. And just to put this entire sequence into perspective, within the span of a few hours, Broly goes from being roughly Namek era tier to challenging Super Gogeta, and even that version of Broly still falls massively short of Gogeta Blue operating at full capacity. Moro is one of the most deceptively dangerous villains Dragon Ball has ever introduced, not because of raw strength at first, but because of how fundamentally broken his abilities are. Unlike most antagonists who rely on power clips, Moro's threat comes from resource denial. He doesn't just fight you, he drains you and dismantles you, winning by default if the battle drags on. When Moro's first introduced, he's ancient and physically unimpressive, but despite that, he casually dominates post-tournament of power Goku and Vegeta on Namek. This is important since these aren't rusty versions of them. This is post-Jiren and post-Broly, not to mention Goku and Vegeta training after the Broly movie, and Moro humiliates them without even standing up. And the reason here is simple. Moro absorbs life energy passively. Just by being on the same planet, Goku and Vegeta are bleeding power. Their transformations don't matter, and neither does their stamina. The longer they fight, the weaker they become, while Moro grows stronger without lifting a finger. This immediately establishes Moro as a hard counter to traditional Saiyan combat. Even Super Saiyan Blue is meaningless here. Vegeta explicitly notes that powering up only accelerates their defeat. Once Moro regains his magic and consumes planets to restore himself, his level skyrockets. This isn't a linear boost, it's exponential. Each planet adds to his reserves, his durability, and his offensive output. By the time he regains his youth, he's no longer just hacks based, he's legitimately powerful. And this is where the scaling gets kind of interesting. A restored Moro is able to contend with Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta directly, without relying solely on energy drain. He tanks hits, trades blows, and forces them on the defensive. And once he absorbs 7-3, everything changes. 7-3 is the real turning point of this arc. By copying abilities, Moro gains access to Ultra Instinct techniques, instant transmission, force spirit vision, regeneration, and multiple elite combat skills all at once. At this stage, Moro isn't just strong, he's optimized. He combines magic and his stolen abilities into a kit that no single fighter can comfortably deal with. Even Ultra Instinct Sign Goku struggles. Now, when examining the matchup directly, the outcome leans heavily in Moro's favor rather than towards Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. Even before Moro reaches his angel empowered state, fusion as a strategy is effectively taken off the table. This is because Moro absorbs Vegeta's spirit vision, a technique explicitly stated to be capable of separating fused warriors as well as extracting stolen or merged energy from opponents. That detail is extremely important when evaluating this fight. Fusion being dismissed as a viable option does tell us a lot. By this point in the story, Goku is already capable of assessing Ultra Instinct Omen on his own, meaning that UI Omen Gogeta is a possibility. Spirit Vision also has a clear limitation. It only works if the target actually takes damage. This is precisely why Vegeta is unable to separate Moro after Moro fuses with 7-3. Moro simply avoids being injured enough for the technique to take effect. Because of this, both Goku and Vegeta implicitly acknowledge that even a hypothetical Ultra Instinct Omen Gogeta would not be capable of simply overwhelming Moro with speed and defeat him instantly. As long as Gogeta were to avoid taking damage, the fusion shouldn't automatically be a loss. But clearly they don't believe that he could. This interpretation is later reinforced when Goku finally defeats Moro using completed Ultra Instinct. After the battle, Goku states that Moro was his toughest opponent he ever had to face up until that point. That statement carries significant weight as it would naturally include fighters like Broly who previously required a Super Saiyan Blue level fusion just to be stopped. The fact that Moro surpasses that benchmark further establishes the scale of this threat. Things become even more lopsided once Moro absorbs the power of an angel. This transformation elevates him to a level comparable to Mastered Ultra Instinct, placing him far beyond what Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta from from the Broly movie has ever demonstrated. Taking all of this into account, the dismissal of fusion as a reliable counter, Moro's ability to use spear efficient, Goku's own assessment of Moro as his most difficult opponent, and Moro's later angel-like power, the conclusion is pretty clear. Moro would decisively defeat Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta from the Broly film, and the gap between them would be substantial.